The twins and the Nanny, the twin daughters of a widow billionaire, couldn't sleep, nor would they let anyone stay in the house until a nanny arrived and did something that changed everything. She won the girls' hearts, and inadvertently, their fathers too. What began as a job turned into the most unexpected love story. Zamieniło się w najbardziej nieoczekiwaną historię miłosną w tej rodzinie. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear. The iron gate closed behind Amber, with a sound that echoed through the neglected garden. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the folder with documents, not from the cold June morning, but from the urgent need that had brought her there. The money from her last job had run out 2 weeks ago, and the bills from the hospital where her mother was admitted kept coming. The house before her seemed suspended in time. Large windows with permanently closed curtains, a garden that had once been lush but now grew wild, and a silence that weighed on every brick. Amber adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder and walked along the stone path to the front door. Before she could even ring the doorbell, the door opened. A tall man, with dark, slightly disheveled hair and eyes that carried the weight of sleepless nights, observed her with an expression that mixed distrust and fatigue. Amber Sullivan. His voice was deep, controlled. "Yes, Mr. Richard. I'm here for the interview." He examined her for a few seconds as if trying to decipher some mystery in her face. Amber stood firm, despite the nervousness growing in her chest. There was something about this man that conveyed a profound sadness, as if he carried an invisible burden. "Come in. The girls are in their room." The interior of the house confirmed the external impression. Quality furniture, but covered with a thin layer of dust. Photographs turned face down on tables, toys scattered in corners, abandoned as if they had lost their purpose. Amber followed Richard down the hallway, observing how he avoided looking at certain doors, certain portraits. "You need to know from the start." He stopped in front of a staircase. "They're not easy children. 6 caregivers have come through here in the last 8 months. All of them quit." Amber nodded, but her determination didn't waver. She knew the pain of abandonment, knew how it manifested in childhood. At 5 years old, when her father left without explanation, she herself had become a difficult child, constantly testing the limits of her mother's love. "They're 5 years old," Richard continued, climbing the stairs. "Identical twins, Lily and Emma. Since they—" He hesitated, swallowing words that seemed to burn his throat. "Since they've been left with just me. They don't sleep through the night, throw constant tantrums, and reject any attempt at affection." They reached the second-floor hallway. Amber could hear children's voices coming from one of the rooms, but they weren't cheerful voices. They sounded more like shouts of frustration. "The salary I offered in the ad still stands." Richard stopped in front of a door decorated with princess stickers that seemed peeled off and forgotten. "But I need someone who will stay, who will really stay." There was a disguised plea in his voice, a contained desperation that Amber recognized immediately. It was the same tone her mother used when asking her not to grow up too fast, not to leave home, not to leave her alone. "I'll stay," Amber said with a conviction that surprised herself. Richard looked her in the eyes for the first time since she arrived. For a brief moment, something softened in his expression, as if a small flame of hope had been lit. He pushed the door to the room. Amber took a deep breath and entered. What she saw made her pause for a few seconds. 2 identical girls with curly brown hair and intense green eyes were sitting on the floor, each in opposite corners of the room. Between them, toys scattered as if they had been thrown in anger. One of the girls held a teddy bear tightly, as if it were her last treasure. The other kept her arms crossed, chin raised in a defiant posture. "Lily, Emma," Richard spoke softly. "This is Amber. She's going to take care of you." The reaction was immediate. The girl with the teddy bear, whom Amber deduced to be Lily, curled up even more in the corner, pressing the toy against her chest. Emma, the defiant one, stood up and crossed her arms even more firmly. "We don't want a nanny," Emma shouted. "We want you to go away." Amber felt her heart tighten. It wasn't anger she saw in the girl's eyes. It was fear. Pure, desperate fear of being abandoned again. "I understand," Amber said, crouching down to their height, but maintaining a respectful distance. "You've had many nannies, haven't you?" "They all left," Lily murmured, her voice almost inaudible. "And you're afraid I'll leave too, is that it?" The two looked at each other, surprised by Amber's direct understanding. Richard observed the scene attentively, as if evaluating every word, every gesture. "You know," Amber continued, sitting on the floor, "when I was little, about your age, my daddy left, and I was so afraid that everyone I loved would leave too, that I started being very angry with everyone." Lily loosened her grip on the teddy bear a little. Emma slightly lowered her arms. "You're angry because you're afraid." Amber didn't ask questions. She simply stated with affection. "And it's okay to be afraid, it's normal." "You won't leave?" Lily asked, her voice a fragile whisper. Amber looked at the two girls, then at Richard, who was watching her with an intensity that made her realize how crucial this moment was for all of them. "I don't know what the future will bring," Amber answered honestly, "but I can promise one thing. While I'm here, you won't be alone, not during the day, not at night." It was a simple promise, but loaded with meaning. Lily stood up slowly, still holding the teddy bear. Emma remained where she was, but her posture had softened. "What's your name again?" Emma asked, feigning disinterest. "Amber." "And what's the name of Lily's teddy bear?" "It's Coffee," Lily answered quickly, as if fearing someone might take him from her. "Coffee is a beautiful name for a teddy bear. He must be very special." Lily nodded vigorously, and for the first time since Amber had entered the room, a small smile appeared on her face. Richard approached. "Amber, if you want to start today, I need to work, and he looked at his daughters with a mixture of love and helplessness. "They need someone." "Of course." Amber stood up, extending a hand to each girl. "How about showing me the house? I want to know all your special corners." Emma hesitated, but Lily, still with the teddy bear, took a step toward Amber. It was a small beginning, almost imperceptible, but it was a beginning. As the girls began talking about the toys scattered around the room, Amber felt something move in her chest. It wasn't just the need for money that kept her there. There was something deeper, a connection she couldn't yet name, but that was already beginning to take root in her heart. Richard observed for a few more minutes before withdrawing, and Amber noticed how he avoided looking directly at his daughters for too long, as if the love he felt for them was too painful to sustain. He was a wounded man trying to care for two small wounds, and they all needed healing. The afternoon passed with Amber getting to know the girls' habits, their quirks, their fears. She discovered that Lily couldn't sleep without the teddy bear and a light on, that Emma insisted on choosing her own clothes even if the combinations were unusual. She also discovered that both stopped playing whenever they heard footsteps in the hallway, waiting to see who appeared, as if living in constant expectation of someone coming or going. When dinner time came, Amber realized that meals in the house were silent and melancholy events. Richard sat at the table with his daughters, but his mind seemed to be elsewhere. The girls ate quickly, anxious to return to their room. "Tomorrow," Amber said while helping Lily finish her juice, "how about we make pancakes for breakfast? Do you know how to make pancakes?" The eyes of both lit up, and for the first time since she arrived, Amber saw a glimpse of the childish joy that had been buried under layers of sadness and fear. Pancakes became Amber's first ritual in the house. The next morning, she arrived early and found Lily already awake, sitting on the bed hugging the teddy bear Coffee, watching the door as if expecting someone to appear. Emma was still sleeping, but restlessly, constantly moving as if running from something in her dreams. "Good morning, Lily," Amber whispered. "Remember the pancakes." The girl's eyes lit up and she nodded enthusiastically. Amber helped her get dressed, noticing how Lily always chose the same colors, pink and white, as if needing something comforting and familiar. When they went down to the kitchen, they found Richard having coffee, dressed in a dark suit, ready for another day of work. He looked surprised at his animated daughter beside Amber. "Daddy, we're going to make pancakes," Lily announced, and Amber noticed how the girl's voice got quieter when she spoke to her father, as if afraid of bothering him. "Really?" Richard forced a smile, but Amber noticed the effort it cost him. "That's great, Princess." Emma appeared in the kitchen, still in pajamas, her hair disheveled and a grumpy expression. "I don't like pancakes," she grumbled, climbing onto a chair. "That's okay," Amber responded calmly. "You can help me make them and decide if you want to eat afterward." The strategy worked. Emma, curious despite her resistance, approached the counter where Amber had separated the ingredients. Lily was already stirring the batter with a spoon too big for her small hands. Richard observed the scene for a few minutes, and Amber felt his gaze upon them. There was something in his expression that she couldn't fully decipher, a mixture of gratitude and melancholy that made her want to understand this man better. "I need to go," he finally said, quickly kissing each daughter's forehead. "Amber, if you need anything—" "We'll be fine," Amber assured, and noticed how he hesitated at the door, as if wanting to say something more. When they were alone, the atmosphere in the house changed. It was as if the tension Richard carried left with him, allowing life to flow naturally again. The pancakes were delicious, but more important than that was seeing Emma laughing when Amber let her flip a pancake and it flew to the ceiling, sticking for a few seconds before falling back into the pan. Lily clapped her hands, and for a few minutes they were just two normal children, happy with an innocent mischief. "Amber," Lily asked while they ate, "do you have children?" "I don't," Amber answered. "Why do you ask?" "Because you're good at taking care of us, like Mommy was." The silence that followed was heavy. Emma stopped eating and looked at her sister with a warning expression, as if Lily had broken an unwritten rule. "Do you want to tell me about your Mommy?" Amber asked gently. "Daddy doesn't like when we talk about her," Emma murmured. "Why do you think that?" "Because he gets sad. Really sad," Lily explained. "And sometimes he cries when he thinks we're not looking." Amber felt her heart tighten. Two small girls carrying the weight of protecting their father from his own pain, denying themselves the right to remember and talk about who they loved most. "You know," Amber leaned toward them, "I think you can talk about Mommy with me whenever you want. And maybe one day we can talk with Daddy too, but slowly, in his own time." Lily and Emma looked at each other, and Amber saw immense relief in their eyes, as if a weight had been lifted from their small shoulders. "She had hair like ours," Lily began timidly. "And she knew how to make really pretty braids," Emma added. "And she sang to us before bedtime," Lily continued, her face lighting up with the memory. Amber listened to every word, every precious memory the girls shared with her. It was as if they were opening a treasure chest kept for a long time, and she felt honored to be the person chosen to receive them. The following days brought a new routine to the house. Amber arrived early and stayed late, accompanying every moment of the girls' day. She discovered that Lily had frequent nightmares, and that Emma had a specific ritual to feel safe. She needed to check if all the doors in the house were closed before sleeping. "Why do you do that?" Amber asked one night, after accompanying Emma on her round of the house. "To make sure no one leaves at night," Emma answered with the brutal honesty of children. Amber understood. For those girls, sleeping meant the risk of waking up and discovering that someone else had disappeared from their lives. It was a fear she knew well, but that she now saw through the eyes of two 5-year-old children. That's when Amber had an idea. The next night, she brought 2 bracelets she had bought downtown. They were simple, made of colorful string with small beads that glowed in the dark. "These are special bracelets," she explained to the girls, who watched her curiously. "When you're afraid, especially at night, just look at them. The beads glow, and that means you're not alone." "How so?" Lily asked, already extending her wrist to receive the bracelet. "Because I have one too." Amber showed her own bracelet. "So even when I'm at home and you're here, we're connected. If one of you looks at her bracelet, mine will glow too, and I'll know you're thinking of me." It was an innocent lie, but filled with love. And it worked. That night, for the first time in months, Lily slept without waking up screaming, and Emma didn't need to get out of bed to check the doors. Richard came home earlier that night and found Amber reading a story to the girls in the living room. It was a domestic, warm scene, dramatically contrasting with the cold silence that had dominated the house for so long. "Did they have dinner?" he asked, sitting in an armchair nearby. "Yes, and they brushed their teeth. We were finishing the story before bedtime." Richard observed his daughters, who were visibly calmer, more at ease. Lily was cuddled up next to Amber, with the teddy bear coffee in her lap, and Emma, despite maintaining some distance, was clearly interested in the story. "Amber," Lily interrupted the reading, "can you sleep here tonight?" Amber hesitated, glancing quickly at Richard. "Well, I don't know if—" "Please," Emma joined her sister's request. "We sleep better when you stay." Richard observed the scene attentively. Something was changing in that house, something he hardly dared to name for fear of breaking it, but it was undeniable. His daughters were different, lighter, more alive. "If Amber wants to stay," he said slowly, "there's a guest room in the hallway." Amber felt a mixture of relief and nervousness. Staying was crossing a line, moving from the formality of caregiver to something more intimate, more familiar. But looking at the two girls who watched her with hopeful eyes, she knew she couldn't refuse. "All right," she smiled, "but only if you promise to sleep the whole night." "We promise," the two shouted in chorus, and even Richard sketched a genuine smile. Later, after the girls were asleep, Amber found herself alone in the kitchen with Richard. He was preparing tea, and the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable but loaded with unspoken things. "They're different," he finally said, handing a cup to Amber. "They're wonderful children. They just needed someone to listen to them." 6 caregivers passed through here. Richard leaned on the counter, his eyes fixed on the cup in his hands. "All competent professionals with excellent references, but with you it's different." Amber felt her heart speed up. There was something in his voice, a softness she hadn't noticed before. "Maybe it's because I understand them," Amber responded. "I know what it's like to be afraid of being abandoned." Richard looked her in the eyes for the first time during the conversation. "And how does one overcome that fear?" "By having someone who stays, even when it's difficult, even when we don't understand why." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. Amber realized she wasn't just talking about the girls, and from Richard's expression he had realized it too. "Amber," he began, but was interrupted by small footsteps on the stairs. "Amber!" Lily appeared in the kitchen, the teddy bear coffee dragging on the floor. "I can't sleep, the bracelet is glowing, but you're not in the room." Amber smiled, picking Lily up. "I'm going there now. Good night, Richard." "Good night," he responded, and Amber felt his gaze as she climbed the stairs with Lily. That night, lying in the guest room, Amber heard the sounds of the house settling down. For the first time in months, there were no cries or screams, just the comforting silence of a family finally finding peace. But she also felt something else moving in her heart, something that scared and excited her at the same time. Richard was no longer just the father of the children she cared for. He was becoming something more complex, more dangerous to her emotional tranquility. Amber touched her bracelet in the dark and made a silent promise. She would stay there for as long as necessary, no matter what her complicated heart tried to whisper in moments of silence. The weeks passed like leaves in the wind, bringing subtle but profound changes to the house that had once been immersed in silence. Amber had become part of the daily routine so naturally that she no longer remembered what life was like before those two green-eyed girls and their particular habits. Lily had gained enough confidence to leave the teddy bear coffee on the bed during playtime, and Emma had begun to smile more often, especially when Amber praised her unusual clothing choices. The house echoed with childish laughter, something that hadn't happened for a long time. Richard was different too. Amber noticed how he came home earlier, how he sat at the table during dinner asking questions about the girls' day, how his eyes lingered a little longer when he watched his daughters playing. And she also noticed how, sometimes, he observed her when he thought she wasn't looking. It was on a rainy Thursday that everything began to crumble. Amber was in the kitchen preparing the afternoon snack when the phone rang. It was the deep voice of a man she didn't know. "Amber Sullivan, this is Dr. Robert Mitchell, attorney for the Wilson family. I need to speak with Mr. Richard about an urgent matter related to the girls. He's not home at the moment. Can I help you with anything? I prefer to speak directly with him. Please ask him to call me as soon as he arrives. It's about the custody of Lily and Emma." Amber felt a chill run down her spine. Custody? What could that mean? When Richard came home that night, she could immediately see that something was wrong. His face was paler than normal, and there was a tension in his shoulders that she hadn't seen in weeks. "A lawyer called," Amber said as soon as the girls went upstairs to play in their room. "He said it was about the girls' custody." Richard closed his eyes and ran his hands over his face. "Sarah's parents," he murmured. "I was expecting this." "What do you mean?" "My wife's parents never forgave me for not being able to save her. They think I'm an inadequate father, that the girls would be better off with them." Amber felt the world spin. "But that's absurd. Anyone can see how much you love your daughters. Love isn't always enough in court." Richard sat heavily in a chair. "They have money, time, a big house, and I'm a single father who works all day and depends on caregivers for his daughters. But the girls are fine. They're happy, adjusted. Now they are." Richard looked directly at Amber. "Because of you. But before you arrived, they were two traumatized, problematic children, and it's all documented. 6 caregivers who left, School reports about difficult behavior, episodes of insomnia and tantrums. Amber felt anger growing in her chest. So now that they're doing well, you'll fight. You'll show how they've changed. And how will I do that? Your caregiver number 7, Amber. How will I convince a judge that this time it's different? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with desperation and fear. Amber saw in his eyes the terror of a father who could lose his daughters and felt something break inside her chest. "Richard," she said softly, "I won't let that happen." He looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and skepticism. "Amber, you don't understand. They'll question everything. Why you stayed when others left, why the girls are so attached to you. They'll insinuate there's something inappropriate in our relationship." Amber felt her blood boil. "Our relationship is completely professional." "Is it?" Richard stood up, approaching her. "Amber, you sleep here 3 nights a week. You know my daughter's deepest fears. You make me laugh for the first time in months. Do you really think this is just professional?" The silence that followed was loaded with unspoken truths. Amber could feel her heart beating strongly in her chest, could see in Richard's eyes the same confusion of feelings she had been trying to ignore for weeks. "Richard," she began, but was interrupted by footsteps on the stairs. "Daddy, Amber!" Lily appeared running with Emma right behind. "We want to show you something." The 2 girls stopped abruptly when they saw the tension in the air. Emma, always more perceptive, frowned. "Why are you fighting?" she asked. "We're not fighting, my love." Amber forced a smile. "What did you want to show us?" Lily held Amber's hand and pulled her toward the stairs. "We made a drawing of our family." Amber felt her heart tighten. What family? She was just the caregiver, no matter how much she sometimes forgot that. In the girls' room, they proudly showed a drawing made with crayons. There were 4 figures holding hands. A tall man, 2 small girls with curly hair, and a brunette woman beside them. "This is Daddy," Lily pointed. "These are me and Emma, and this is you, Amber." "You're in the middle," Emma explained, "because you take care of us." Amber looked at Richard, who was observing the drawing with an impossible-to-decipher expression. There was so much innocence in that paper, so much love expressed in a simple and pure way. "It's beautiful," Amber said, her voice a little hoarse. "You are amazing artists." But inside she felt a mixture of joy and terror. The girls saw her as part of the family, but what if the grandparents managed to take them away? What if all of this crumbled? That night, after the girls were asleep, Amber and Richard met again in the kitchen. The weight of the day hung over them like a dark cloud. "Amber," Richard began, "I need you to know that regardless of what happens with this custody situation, you saved my daughters, and you saved me too." "Don't say that as if it were a goodbye," Amber responded, her voice firm. "We'll fight, together." "Together," he repeated, and something changed in his eyes. "Amber, can I ask you something? Why did you stay, really? All the others left, but you stayed. Why?" Amber hesitated. It was a question she had been asking herself for weeks. "At the beginning it was for the money," she admitted. "My mother is sick and I needed to work. But then I saw 2 girls who needed someone to believe in them, and a father who was drowning in his own pain, and I realized that maybe I needed you all too." Richard moved closer, extending his hand to gently touch Amber's face. "Amber," but before he could continue, the phone rang again. It was late, too late for a normal call. Richard answered with a sense of foreboding. "Richard, this is Dr. Robert Mitchell. I'm sorry to call so late, but we've received an emergency petition. The girls' grandparents are requesting immediate temporary custody. We have a hearing scheduled for Monday." Amber saw the color drain from Richard's face. Monday. That was 4 days away. "On what basis?" Richard asked, his voice controlled but tense. "They claim there has been a significant change in the children's routine, with a caregiver living in the house, and they want to assess if the environment is appropriate for minors." "Richard, I need you to come to my office tomorrow morning. We have a lot of work ahead." When Richard hung up the phone, the silence in the kitchen was deafening. Amber felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. "They know," she whispered. "They know I've been staying here." "Amber, it's not your fault." "But it is. I crossed a line. I let this become more than work. And now the girls are happy for the first time in months," Richard exploded. "They sleep through the night, laugh, play, behave like normal children. How can that be wrong?" Amber knew he was right, But she also knew that the law didn't always see what was best for the children. "Richard," she said slowly, "maybe I should leave. Temporarily. Until the situation is resolved." "No." The response came quick and desperate. "Amber, if you leave now, the girls will panic. They'll think you abandoned them like all the others." It was true, and they both knew it. Amber touched her bracelet, remembering the promise she had made to the girls. She looked at Richard, saw the desperation in his eyes, and made a decision. "Then we'll fight," she said with renewed determination. "We'll show the judge that these girls are well cared for, that they are loved, that they have a family, even if it's an unconventional family." Richard looked at her with something that went far beyond gratitude. It was admiration. It was affection. It was something that neither of them yet dared to fully name. "Amber," he said softly, "what I feel for you." "I know," she interrupted. "I feel it too. But now is not the time to think about that. Now is the time to protect your daughters." That dawn, Amber went up to the guest room with a heavy heart. Through the window, she could see the rain hitting the glass, as if the sky itself was crying for the uncertainties that awaited them. The days preceding the hearing passed like a whirlwind of emotions and preparations. Amber tried to maintain normalcy in the girls' routine, but she couldn't completely hide the tension consuming her. Lily, always sensitive, noticed something was different and began to follow Amber like a shadow, as if fearing she might disappear at any moment. Emma, in turn, returned to some old behaviors, checking the doors before sleeping with more insistence and asking direct questions that cut like blades. "Amber, do the grandparents want us to go live with them?" she asked during Saturday's breakfast. Amber almost dropped the cup she was holding. Richard, who was reading some legal documents at the table, quickly raised his eyes. "Why are you asking that, my love?" Amber tried to keep her voice calm. "Because last night I heard you talking, and Daddy seemed sad," Emma responded with the brutal frankness of children. Lily stopped eating and looked at Amber with wide eyes. "Are you leaving?" Amber's heart broke seeing the fear on the faces of the two girls. She looked at Richard, who nodded slightly, as if giving permission for her to be honest. "Girls," Amber knelt beside their chairs, "sometimes families go through difficult times, and now we're going through one of those times." "What kind of difficult time?" Lily asked, hugging the teddy bear coffee tightly. "Your grandparents think it would be better if you went to live with them," Richard explained gently, "and a judge will decide what's best for you." Emma got up from her chair abruptly. "But I don't want to go. I want to stay here with you and Amber." "Me too," Lily began to cry. "Amber, you promised you wouldn't leave." Amber felt tears burning her eyes. "And I won't leave, darlings. No matter where you are, I'll always be here." She touched their chests over their hearts. "And you'll always be here with me." But the words, however loving, couldn't calm the fear that had taken hold of the girls. The rest of the weekend was tense, with Lily having nightmares again and Emma returning to tantrums. On Monday morning, Amber dressed in the most sober outfit she owned and accompanied Richard to the courthouse. The girls stayed with the neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, a kind lady whom Amber had met a few weeks earlier. "Everything will be all right," Mrs. Johnson whispered to Amber before they left. "Anyone with eyes can see that these children are happy and well cared for." The courthouse was a cold and intimidating environment. Amber sat next to Richard at the defense table, trying to control her nerves. On the other side were Sarah's parents, an elegant couple in their 60s, accompanied by a lawyer who looked like he had stepped out of the pages of a magazine. Dr. Robert Mitchell, Richard's lawyer, was a simpler man, but Amber could see in his eyes the determination to fight for his clients. The hearing began with the grandparents' lawyers presenting their argument. They talked about Richard's emotional instability after the loss of his wife, about the 6 caregivers who had left, about episodes of problematic behavior from the girls at school. "Your Honor," the grandparents' lawyer said in a pompous voice, "the children have been living in an environment of constant change, with caregivers who come and go from their lives. Recently, we discovered that the current caregiver, Miss Amber Sullivan, has been sleeping in the residence regularly, which we consider inappropriate and potentially harmful to the emotional development of the minors." Amber felt her cheeks burning with anger and shame. The way the lawyer spoke about her made it seem like there was something sordid about her dedication to the girls. When it was the defense's turn, Dr. Robert stood up calmly. "Your Honor, I would like to present some evidence that completely contradicts the picture painted by the opposing party." He began showing recent school reports, where teachers praised the dramatic improvement in the girl's behavior, letters from neighbors testifying about the childish laughter that had returned to echo through the house. And then he called Amber to testify. "Miss Sullivan," Dr. Robert began, "can you tell us why you decided to remain in this position when 6 other professionals gave up?" Amber took a deep breath. "When I met Lily and Emma, I saw 2 children who were suffering greatly. They weren't problematic, they were traumatized. They needed someone who had the patience to understand that behind the rebellion was fear and pain." "And why did you start sleeping in the house?" "Because they had terrible nightmares and fear of being abandoned. When I stayed, they could sleep through the night. It was a decision made thinking solely and exclusively of their well-being." The grandparents' lawyer stood up. "Miss Sullivan, don't you think you became too emotionally involved with this family? That you crossed professional boundaries?" Amber looked directly at him. "Sir, if caring for 2 children as if they were my own daughters, if losing sleep so they feel safe, if transforming a silent house into a home full of life is crossing professional boundaries, then yes, I crossed them, and I would do it all again." There was a murmur of approval in the audience. Amber looked at Richard and saw pride in his eyes. The judge, a middle-aged man with a serious expression, asked some additional questions and then requested a break to analyze the documents. During the pause, Amber and Richard went outside for some air. They were nervous, but also more united than ever. "Amber," Richard said, holding her hands, "regardless of what happens here, I want you to know that you gave us something I thought we had lost forever: hope." "Richard, let me finish. I love you, Amber. Not just for saving my daughters, but for showing me that it's possible to love again without betraying the memory of those who are gone. For bringing light back into our home." Amber felt tears streaming down her face. "I love you too. I love you and I love your daughters, as if they were mine." They kissed there, in the courthouse hallway, sealing a promise that went far beyond the legal circumstances that brought them there. When they returned to the room, the judge was already back. His expression was impossible to decipher. After carefully analyzing all documents and testimonies, he began, "It is clear that there has been a significant change in the minors' lives in recent months. The question is determining whether this change is beneficial or harmful." Amber held her breath. "School reports show a remarkable improvement in behavior and academic performance of the children. Neighbors' testimonies confirm they have returned to playing and laughing normally, and Miss Sullivan's testimony demonstrates a genuine commitment to the minors' well-being." The judge paused, looking directly at the grandparents. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, I understand the love you feel for your granddaughters and your desire to protect them, but what I see here is not negligence or an inadequate environment. I see a father who, with help, found a way to properly care for his traumatized daughters." Amber felt her heart race. "Therefore, I deny the request for temporary custody. The girls will remain with their father, and I recommend that the current care structure be maintained." The room exploded in murmurs. The grandparents looked shocked, while Amber and Richard embraced, relieved and emotional. But the judge hadn't finished yet. "Miss Sullivan, I would like to make an observation. It is evident that your dedication to these children goes far beyond the professional aspect. If there are romantic feelings involved with the father of the minors, I suggest you make clear the nature of your relationship. These children have already suffered enough losses and deserve emotional stability." Amber and Richard looked at each other, and in that moment both knew what they needed to do. A week later, in a small ceremony at the courthouse with Lily and Emma as special witnesses, Amber and Richard got married. It wasn't a grand wedding, but it was perfect. The girls wore new dresses and the bracelets that Amber had given them, and Amber wore a simple necklace that had been Sarah's, given to her by Richard as a symbol that past and present love could coexist harmoniously. "Now you're really our mum?" Lily asked after the ceremony, while they ate chocolate cake in the kitchen at home. "I've always been your mum in my heart," Amber answered, kissing the girl's forehead. "Now it's just official." Emma, always practical, frowned. "But what if you and Daddy fight? Will you leave?" Amber knelt in front of the 2 girls. "Emma, Lily, look into my eyes. Real families don't abandon each other. They may fight, they may disagree, they may have difficult days, but they always find a way to stay together. Always." Richard approached, embracing the 3 women of his life in a hug. "We're a family now," he said softly, "and families take care of each other." That night, Amber tucked the girls into bed for the first time as their official mother. They still wore the bracelets that glowed in the dark, but now they didn't need them anymore to feel safe. They knew that Amber would be there in the morning and the next morning, and in all the mornings to come. As she turned off the light in the room, Amber heard Lily whisper to Emma, "Now we have a complete family again." And Amber smiled, touching her own bracelet one last time before going to the bedroom she now shared with Richard. She had come to that house looking only for a job to help her sick mother. She found much more than that. She found a purpose, she found love, she found her place in the world. Sometimes she thought as she lay down next to the man she had learned to love, life takes us exactly where we need to be, even when we don't know that's where we want to go. The end, dear listeners. We hope that the story of Amber, Richard, Lily, and Emma has touched your hearts as much as it touched ours. This is a narrative about how love can emerge in the most unexpected places and how families can form in unique and beautiful ways. To continue this emotional journey with us, we've prepared a special playlist with equally engaging and touching stories. You can find it here by clicking to the left of your screens. If this story awakened emotions in you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of human relationships and the transformative power of true love. Don't miss our upcoming content and tell us in the comments, which moment of this story moved you the most? We're eager to read your impressions and continue sharing these emotional journeys with you.